Welcome to the most forward-thinking, inspirational podcast in this reality. The show designed to challenge everything we've been taught. If you've ever felt there had to be more to life, more to existence, then you're listening to the right podcast. Time to open your mind and dive in. This is the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast.
And here we go.
Mental Mastery Alliance podcast. Today I am completely kerfuffled with absolutely everything that's going on when it comes to technology. We've got Guy Anderson's back on the show. And this is one of those conversations I feel is going to be quite punchy, at least filled with some half-decent information. And we're even on video, so there's going to be some video clips of this bad boy as well. We're using new tech because I am not at home. I am traveling. I'm at the girlfriend's house right now, and even my computer wouldn't connect with this. And like I said before, I've been in situations where everything works perfectly fine until you're supposed to have a powerful / meaningful conversation. And when you do, everything under the sun tries to prevent it from happening. Like when you're supposed to hear something important on a cell phone, it starts buzzing out and glitching out. Anyway, enough of that yammer, jimmer, jammer. Welcome back to the show, Guy Anderson. We're a little bit late. It's 10:30 my time now. So I've been trying to get this going for 45 minutes. Isn't that incredible? Just thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me back on. We got there in the end.
Yeah, no, we did. Unfortunately for the audience, because of my snafu, our conversation will be cut short. We chewed into our time that way. But we have so much to talk about. So many interesting things. Ladies and gentlemen, we first had Guy on the show. I don't exactly know the exact episode at this moment in time, even though I probably should. Yet another thing that went by the wayside. This is, feel free to check it out. That was about 6 months ago, maybe 5-6 months ago. And we talked all about his books, his ideologies, his knowledge, and we just sort of rattled on for a good hour and a half, 2 hours. His books are Tesla and the Cabbage Patch, Agartha to Zombies, Rise of the Clones. This is all going to be in the show notes and all that sort of stuff. So you guys are definitely going to be able to check this stuff out, and please support him as we move forward. If you like this stuff, don't just go willy-nilly supporting people. Vote for what you like with your dollars. That's basically all they're good for these days. Guy, let me ask you a quick question. Let's start this off with a bang. I am of the firm belief that this push for data centers, this fear porn that they're throwing at us about how deadly they are, I'm seeing so many contradictions in what we're supposed to see, do, act, believe. First and foremost, companies were 100% on you for climate change, global warming, watch your footprint. And now these data centers are just chewing through resources for whatever reason. I don't fully understand it, but they're like, nope, they're going here, they're going there. We're toning back the data, the fear porn for global change or for global warming and all that sort of stuff. And then on top of that, they've allowed us to understand that Aaron Brockovich is on the case. Now, what's your take on that?
Well, first of all, I don't know if they are data centers. That's what we're referring them.
Yeah.
We're referring to them as data centers, but actually, what are they? Because they weren't there 5 minutes ago, and I've never experienced a problem with storing data, and I'm not aware of the systems out there having an issue with it, because we know that we can store incredible amounts of data, even in a crystal. So why do you need a huge building to store data, and why so many of them? If you look at the east coast of Florida, they're scattered, from top to bottom. It doesn't make any sense. So I don't know if they actually are data centers at all or something else. There's also a possibility that these are just a cover story for blackouts and water shortages, because some areas have been told that they might have to look for an alternative electrical supplier because there's a data center being being built in their area. So could this just be part and parcel of, a much larger program where we are going to have blackouts and we're going to, have our utilities, not necessarily cut off altogether, but certainly inhibited. So I don't know. I would love to look inside one of these places. I just don't think they are what we're being told.
I agree with that completely. And this is one of those things like, we're seeing so much fear porn out there about data centers going in. And the funny thing is, if you really think about it, the powers that be, if they were up to something nefarious that was damaging to us, we wouldn't even know about it. So that they're announcing these data centers going in all over the place in apparently every free space that's out there, is to me part of the thing. It's part of the illusion, part of the mystery behind it. And like you said, data centers, it's just the word that we're using. I don't know what these boxes are. But like you said, we don't, you can fit data on something the size of your thumbnail. There's something called a thumb drive. But so what is it? And then people will say, well, it's processing. AI is processing at such a rate that blah, 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 blah. And I even think about that story too. And I do know that water, there's a finite amount of water on the planet. So even if the water is used to cool these things, that water will evaporate, go up into the clouds, turn into rain, get filtered, and come back down. So it's not going anywhere, and then people will say things like, well, you don't know how the water table works and this, that, and the other thing. Every single person that's talking is just chirping. And I find the further I go down these rabbit holes and the further I go into this part of, I guess, life or reality, I find that everyone has to have an answer. I have tons of questions. I don't have any answers anymore. When I was third dimensional, I had all the answers. But now I don't live in the answer. I live in the question. So when I see this stuff, there are so many things to me that are just like, everything is jumping out at me. This whole thing is jumping out at me as false, fake, misinformation, absurdity, really. And I don't fully understand. I don't understand it. I don't understand how we get past this or what it even means, to be honest with you. But it's fascinating to me. It's fascinating to watch the people argue over what these things are. And like you said, looking into the future, it's what could it possibly be? I don't know.
I think one of the interesting points that you've raised there is that it's okay to say we don't know. There are people out there that have very fixed opinions on subjects, and sometimes they are able to substantiate them. They're able to provide research and evidence to show that they've investigated this to the nth degree and present us with what appears to be undeniable evidence that what they're saying is correct. But in contrast to that, there are a lot of people out there that will say they know exactly what is going on, perhaps with the data centers, for example, yet they haven't actually got any information that they could share that would corroborate their argument. And I think every now and again we've got to say, I don't know. I've got absolutely no idea what is going on with those data centers. All I suspect is that they are not what we are being told. And I don't even know if we should refer to them as data centers. They're an anomaly right now. They don't make sense. We know how quickly technology evolves. So the chances are by the time they've constructed all of these all over the world, that the technology that they've installed is going to be obsolete. So it makes absolutely no sense. And this is why I suspect there is something else going on. And as I said earlier on, they could be an excuse for people having electrical blackouts, water shortages. Of course, the water that is pumped through these places, if they are doing what they say, is likely to be contaminated and very unlikely to be cleaned and filtered before it's put back through the system. So that could be adding to the chemtrails that we experience and polluting the water and the oceans. It's definitely if they are doing what they say they're going to do, then it's going to damage environments locally. They may provide employment, but I imagine that predominantly they're going to be automated. So I suspect there's something else going on there. There are lots of options, aren't there? They could be FEMA camps. They could become 15-minute cities where actually inside those they are building little apartments, prison cells almost, for us to go and move into. They could be, used for a whole number of things. It would be interesting to speak to somebody that actually has worked on the construction of one of those towards the end. But who would be prepared to whistleblow, and who would actually, provide us with the truth? That's another question entirely.
I would assume that somebody would, because the amount of these buildings going up and the amount of people that it would take to put them together. Now, granted, the majority of people doing this putting together they're just looking at a blueprint and nailing the wood together type of thing. A little bit more extravagant than that. There's probably not too many people that see the whole picture. Like this is just what they do. One group of people gets to do this. One group of people gets to do that. Nobody gets to see the whole picture. But when you said FEMA camps, I remember years and years and years ago, I used to say that what we have over here in North America, I don't know if you guys have over there, but in Canada specifically, we have these massive buildings going into place. And they're quote unquote logistics buildings right now. So with the rise of Amazon and the need to ship everything, these buildings are the logistics buildings where they hold all the stuff before it all gets shipped out. Now, they just all happen to coincide, and this makes sense now. They all happen to coincide with or be placed next to train tracks, which makes sense because you have to get the product in on the rail, and why not put it right next to the rail, et cetera, et cetera. But prior to these massive buildings going up, the Walmarts, all the Walmarts across North America are also on train track lines or very close to them. And there's talk of FEMA camps being, or Walmarts being turned into FEMA camps. And I've always called those giant, quote unquote, logistics buildings, I've always called them people carriers for over a decade. And so like the normal people in my life always sort of make fun of me. And I'm like, look, we're getting closer and closer to this dystopian truth that I'm stating. And it almost sounds like I'm pushing fear porn when I say it now, because there was a moment in time where I would have believed that, we need to worry about this and we need to think about this stuff. But the truth of the matter is there are so many stages that have to take place prior to people being shuffled into these camps. That there's going to be a way out. There's going to be something. There's going to be sort of a redirect or something for you to do to get out of the way of that. And I'm fascinated by the whole thing, but it's just so weird to see these things come true. And so what you said about tiny apartments in there and what's going on in that reminds me of I can't remember the name of the show right now, but it's a recent show. They just did season 2, and they've moved the people into the mountain. But it's got the under the dome, it's got the sky, it's got all this sort of stuff. So you don't even know kind of that you're in this facility, and it was deemed as safety. Like you're here to be safe. The rich and the elite, the well qualified people are in this facility. But as it turns out, there's nothing wrong with the outside world. Everybody in there has been lied to, type of thing, right? Which, ironically, is the premise of your Cabbage Patch Kids. And them doing that with North America. And so I think, we're tying all this in together. And if this is a microcosm of people moving into these buildings, for example, then the macrocosm would be the Cabbage Patch Kids coming to North America. And that to me fascinates. I find that absolutely fascinating because in your opinion, it wouldn't even be that hard of a process. I'm curious of your opinion. Would it be that hard of a process to move these people into this building with some form of manipulation?
Do you mean come up with a backstory, a narrative to get them in?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, the obvious answer to that is Project Bluebeam for me. Because if you're going to stage a fake alien invasion, then people are going to want shelter. They're going to want to be protected. Because the problem we have is that the majority of the world have what appears to be Stockholm syndrome. We kind of go to our captors for help. So in the event of an emergency, the very people we despise would probably be the majority in the majority of cases, the same people that we would go to seek help from. And that help might come with us being given access or allowed into a secure location that is almost bulletproof, completely protected, patrolled with surveillance and so all of the things that we don't want to be constantly monitored and spied upon, we would embrace, because it's going to now protect us from whatever is out there coming to get us, which will more than likely, if it happens, be CGI anyway. And anything that we see that is real is more than likely going to be deep state and military, far from an actual alien invasion. And I think the timing of the new Steven Spielberg film is uncanny. They're building up for something. I suspect we're going to see some kind of significant event, either with the UFC outside the White House or during the World Cup. And with regard to the World Cup, there is a game fixed for, I don't know who's playing it yet, because it's got to go through, obviously, the rounds to decide who the teams are going to be that get through. But there is a game fixed for the 4th of July in Pennsylvania. Beg your pardon, in Philadelphia. And obviously the 4th of July in Philadelphia, it will be the 250th anniversary of the beginning of New World Order. So I would imagine they're going to want to mark that occasion. They're going to want to do something significant. And with regard to the World Cup itself, how many times would you have people across the entire world all tune in and watch the same thing at exactly the same time? I mean, that's the only time I can think of is probably 9/11, but we were all watching different channels, but we were stopped dead in our tracks and fixated on the news and watching what was going on with these towers. I can't think of another time in recent history where everybody will be gathered around the screen, the TV, the monitor, watching the same thing. So the World Cup final or the opening of the World Cup, that might be a brilliant opportunity to stage something like that. So I don't know. I just don't believe for one moment they are data centers.
I love the flow of this because as the host, I say things and I connect dots, and you just jumped to the next topic without me even connecting the dot. But that's it. So the data centers are huge. And when you tied in alien invasion, I thought, okay, so that even makes sense. And then now there would easily be a way, I can't think of it right now, but there would easily be a way for them to be like, these are data centers and this is what's going on in here. And these are the things that we've built, and it wouldn't be too hard for us to convert them into living spaces, because people believed right out the gate that somehow there was enough vaccines built to cover 8 billion people 3 times over. And they just accepted that was the thing. I couldn't believe how quickly they accepted that was possible. We can't solve world hunger. We can't fix the drinking water in Flint, Michigan. But what is the math on that? 24 billion shots. I mean, I can't even imagine the liquid that goes into that. And yeah, to get them to understand it, to comprehend it, and to move into these buildings seems to me absurd. But like you said, one thing. And then how do we get that one thing to be a thing? And so now you've jumped into the World Cup. I want to talk about the Stargate too. The UFC. The slip of the tongue there. The idea, and just say that they can do this, they can pull this off, they can make people believe. If everybody's already watching the World Cup, and for the first time ever, or at least first time in my memory, it's in the United States. And there's also massive talk about, and I'm jumping all over the place, but thankfully my followers or my listeners can follow along with me. The World Cup being in the United States would be a focal point. The fact that the United States is there's a lot of new information or information being released that sort of states that the old world that we're familiar with is actually North America. And, there's so much that goes into the naming, the hills, the Babylonian times, all that sort of stuff that we believe was over in Europe or the Middle East was actually in North America. Now, a buddy of mine said the same thing, but he said, no, we used to be one giant continent. And I'm like, I'm not sure I totally believe that continental drift theory, but at the same time, I don't see why not. I mean, geography in and of itself is a total lie, no matter what we believe it to be. But even if they could convince all these people to do this stuff, the aliens being the thing, first of all, we'd have to accept the fact that aliens knew that we were all watching the World Cup and then they would invade. As opposed to like a small alien here or a small alien there, we would be like, no, this isn't right, this isn't right. But if enough people see it accidentally or inadvertently or something mysterious, I could see them then giving all of that energy, like you just said, to the World Trade Center. The World Trade Center was a lot easier because so many people were relatively in the dark as to what could possibly, as to the nefariousness of what could actually be going on. You and I understand, too, the symbology and the symbolism behind all of it, the 250 years, the anniversary, the fact that they want to do all this stuff. Now, my follow-up to all of that statement for everybody to take in is guys like you and me aren't getting vaccinated. We aren't believing in Project Bluebeam. We aren't believing the narrative. We don't care. We're going to navigate our lives sort of in and around all of the things that they're doing, and we're going to try to do our best to understand it, comprehend it, and live. I guess the best term is as properly as you can be with as much integrity as you can have. That's how we're going to live our lives. So if all of the people that do believe these stories and that end up in these places for safety, and even the people that got vaccinated, like, I don't understand how that benefits them, because all they're doing is basically punishing the people who believe them and raising the strength and awareness of the people who doubt the narrative. I don't know if I led that into a follow-up, but what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So first of all, I think the pandemic served several purposes. One was that they wanted to see what they could get away with. How far could they push us? Could they shut the entire world down and make every single citizen in the world stay inside their homes? And they achieved it, relatively speaking. To start with, you know, for the first week, I loosely complied. I carried on going to work, but there I was just doing jobs. I owned a tattoo studio. So there I thought I'd use it as an opportunity to decorate, do a few bits and pieces, and thought, okay, well, I'm furloughed. It was a limited company, so I'm getting paid. I'm going to take some time out. The weather was incredible. And then after a week or so, I started to think, hold on a moment. There's something not quite right. So my wife and I went down to London, which was about an hour from where we lived. The place was deserted, but we went into the city and there was a lot of construction going on there, and it was Chinese companies. Even the portaloos, the toilets, were Chinese. A lot of work going on. And I sort of started to smell a rat and started speaking to other people about it, put some stuff on Facebook, got banned from Facebook shortly after doing that, and just decided I was going to carry on as if there wasn't a pandemic at all. But the majority of people, and I even had a neighbour come and knock on my door because I was playing some music in my back garden. And I don't know what I was doing. I think it was a nice evening. I'd had some music on. And what we were doing over here was at 7 p.m. every day, we were supposed to stand outside our house and clap to support all of the frontline workers, the doctors and nurses that were helping everyone. And I refused to do that. What I had actually done was gone down to the emergency services in our town and dropped off big box of sweets and some other bits and pieces to the ambulance crew and the paramedics. And somebody knocked on my door, my next door neighbour, and said, "Why are you playing your music? You should be stood out here clapping." And I said, "Well, I don't agree with clapping. These people aren't paid enough for what they do. So what I've done is actually gone down to the hospital and dropped off some bits and pieces for them, some sweets and a big box of chocolates and some other things. I thought they'd appreciate that far more than not being able to hear me clap from 7 miles away." Right. And he got really aggressive. So I then had to warn him and said, you know, "You're in my face. I'm going to count to 3. and you're going to have to go away because under the self-defense laws, I can preempt. I can use a preemptive strike, so I can hit somebody once as a warning, and then obviously you can't take it any further than that. And he backed down and walked away. And then I started to think that this is all a little bit of a joke. So what I did was covertly reopened the tattoo studio. I got a company to go in and install some film on the windows, smoke the windows out, so we could see through them, but people couldn't see in. And I let it known to a small group of people and a couple of my colleagues that we were going to be back up and running. So instead of being shut for the first 3 months, we were shut for a few weeks. And one of my clients was quite a high-ranking police officer in the town that I lived in.
Mm-hmm.
And he came in and he actually said, any chance of getting some ink done? I won't tell anyone. And I said, yeah, no problem at all. Tattooed him, started tattooing his colleagues. Then I started doing a bit of tattooing at home. So once a week, I'd have a police car on my drive for several hours, and people started twitching, wondering what was going on. And the police were telling me exactly the same thing, that there's something not quite right. They didn't even understand what they were supposed to do to enforce any of the rules. People were using it against them to avoid being arrested or questioned. They were saying, you can't come near me. I can't get in the car with you because I need to be at least a metre away. And the police actually threw the towel in and said that we give up. We don't understand the rules, and the people that we're going after seem to know them better than us. This is impossible. So the whole thing looked like it was just an exercise to see what they could get away with and how many people would buckle, followed by the master plan of vaccinating us, putting all of these nasties into our bodies. That ultimately we've seen turbo cancer, we've seen all sorts of problems, respiratory problems. But, I don't want to sort of go on about the pandemic and the side effects and the links to 5G and so on. But for me, I think it was all part of Agenda 2030.
On my list. That's actually on my list of things that I want to talk about is the rollout between 3G, 4G, 5G, and the viruses that, SARS, COVID, what was the new one? Hanta and all that sort of stuff for the 6G that's coming. That's
yeah. So I think for what was the purpose of it? I think ultimately it was twofold. It was really an exercise in seeing how far they could push the public and get them to do whatever they said across the world. And the second was getting that vaccine in us. Because, people that I speak to, people within my family have had problems conceiving since they've been vaccinated. 5 people my cousin and 4 people that I knew well have gone. One was an usher at my wedding. So I've lost a very close friend, a cousin, and 3 other friends in the last 3 years. So I think it's depopulation, reducing fertility rates, and a wicked exercise in how far they can push the public and get them to get them to a point where you would, I don't know what happened there, but over here, we were encouraged to report on friends and family and neighbours if we saw them not following the rules. Now, that's unprecedented. I think it was probably very successful for them. But of course, now we've got these 2 camps, haven't we? We've got vaccinated blood and unvaccinated blood. So people would argue, why didn't they just get rid of everybody? Why don't they just get rid of us all? Well, we have an infrastructure that needs maintaining, and you can't go out there and start culling the population without the rest of the population standing up and saying, hold on a moment, you're not doing this, and having some kickback, and also the people that would be instructed to do it. Very few of those are going to say, well, I'm going to go along with this. They're going to hand in their gun and their badge and perhaps join us and fight the system. So I don't think it's as easy as that. I think it's more of a slow burn.
In Canada, they, talking about the COVID, before they started overly enforcing COVID rules, they fired everybody that didn't get vaccinated. Everyone that was opposed to vaccines got canned. So the only police left on the force were vaccinated police that loved the Kool-Aid. They also massively hired and gave power to our bylaw. So people that hand out tickets and stuff like that. And so all of these people were trying to be heroes. So the cops never really bothered you, but bylaw was, just some loser that all of a sudden had a little bit of power. And I remember talking about that. I had a gathering, and we had these rules where you can't have more than three households or 10 people or something at your house, whatever it was. And I had bylaw come up, and I picked a fight with bylaw. I had 20 or 30 people in the house. And he said, we need to do a head count. We need everybody to come to the front door. And I said, absolutely not. I said, the fact that you two are here are actually putting our numbers over, and you're putting us all at risk. You're going to spread COVID. You're going to kill us all by being here. So we can't have you here. You're breaking the law. You're setting our numbers off, and you're not allowed to be here. He's like, well, we have to come in, or we're giving you a ticket. I'm like, well, you can't come in. First and foremost, you don't have any permission to come into my house. If you want to give me a ticket, go right ahead. Just write it up and put it right there, and I'll take care of it afterwards. He goes, no, we have to hand it to you. I said, okay, fine, hand it to me. So buddy goes and writes his little ticket, something to do with a $4,000 fine. And I said, there's no proof of this. I said, there's no proof of any of this stuff. You're guessing at how many. He goes, well, we wouldn't have to guess if you would let the people come to the front door. And I said, no, everybody's having a good time, and we're trying to not sing happy birthday, because that was a thing, and we're trying to stay relatively separate. I can't gather everybody at the front door, so it's not going to happen. So I took the ticket, I ripped it up, and I just threw it back at the guy. So now it's on my. He goes, we can nail you for littering. I'm like, actually, you can't nail me for littering. This is my property. I can nail you for trespassing. So they just buggered off. And I never, ever heard anything about that ticket. It never came up. It never got back. There was nothing in the system. Nothing came back to me in the mail and all this sort of stuff. So the bylaw people were nuts. And I had neighbors. Well, neighbors were reporting us for not getting into it. But in the same vein, I have a friend, an internet friend, but this fellow by the name of Mac Parhar, and he'd been on the show a few times, and he was a massive advocate. So over in BC, he kept his yoga studio open. He made the news. He was all over the news. They bastardized and butchered the news. It was phenomenal, because he had a recording of the conversation that he had with the girl, and she sounded like an angel. And they recorded him. The conversation sounded fantastic. And then, and he uploaded it. He goes, this is the raw conversation with our CBC. And then they aired the story, and he sounds like a raving lunatic, right? But this is also the guy that was going to all of the hospitals and showing that they were empty. He was videotaping. He was walking through all the hospitals and be like, they're empty. There's nobody in the hospitals. There's no emergency people doing anything. And so the whole thing was fascinating. Now, the weird thing about Mac is he died. He was 51 years old, 52 years old, whatever, and he was found dead in his own bathroom. And to me, it's like, the world can jump through hoops and be all mysterious about that, but I just think it was bad timing. He wasn't vaxxed, he wasn't this, he wasn't any of that sort of stuff. But if you look at the coroner's report, he died of COVID. Right? And so
you
this
can't
guy
die from COVID.
Well, that's what killed him. On his death certificate was COVID. We know this because we spoke with the wife afterwards. So, it's one of those things where this guy was right in my backyard, and oh, did we lose you? Ladies and gentlemen, if you are still with me, I feel like I said before, a lot of this show and a lot of the times that we're trying to talk about certain things, energies and technologies screw up. And it looks like we've just lost Guy. Looks like he's gone. Which is fascinating, because we're 33 minutes in. Isn't that interesting? And if we can't get him back, I may upload this episode anyhow. And then we'll pick up sort of where we left off on the next episode. This may be my first ever 2-part episode. A wild turn of events. And I will say this too. This was an episode. This was a weird hour and a half for me. Like there was a lot of truth that was about to come out, or at least information that can be applied to truth. And to have the information, or to have the interview cut short this way, is fitting with how the whole day went. But what are you going to do? This is the way she goes. This is live recording, and this is mistakes that go the way they go. But this episode's going to go up, and we're not done here. So unfortunately for you guys today, we're cutting it short. Wait a second here. Looks like he might be back. You are back. So, and that's a fascinating thing, because I was just saying, recording to the audience, I'm like, if I wasn't going to get you back or anything like that, then this is just part and parcel with how the day has gone, as you and I are trying to have this conversation and trying to connect on some pretty pressing points. The powers that be, or the information. I don't mean the powers that be as in one person wearing a baseball hat pressing buttons. I mean the general ethos of where we live doesn't want certain informations out. And as you and I were talking about that, you disappeared. So I was willing to cut this one right in half and be like, okay, moving forward, we'll get him back, and this will be a 2-part episode. But
I've had the same thing happen myself several times. I was talking on a live feed, and I started talking about the Freemasons, and it immediately cut me off. And I look at my YouTube channel, and the numbers of subscribers are growing, but they don't reflect the views that I'm getting.
Right.
So, and somebody actually said to me this week that they have the notifications set. So if I put up a new video, they're informed straight away. Nothing. I'm restricted on Facebook. On Facebook, only 5% of the people that subscribe or follow me, actually see my posts unless they specifically click on me and have a look. It's getting worse. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, you're quite right. There are anomalies, and you mentioned this guy that was found dead at 51 years old.
Mac. Yep.
You know, I would instantly suspect that something had happened there, something nefarious. You know, he was got at.
I would too. But at the same time, in my research and in my studying, I don't believe they have the ability or the power to kill you. I think, how do I put this? I think everything has to be of your own choice. So my take too on the vaccines is everybody who got 2 shots, for the most part, is kind of fun, because those were absolutely mandatory. People were losing freedoms left, right, and center until they got these shots. But I think that they're okay for the most part. It's the people that got 3 shots or more that are now voluntarily drinking the Kool-Aid that are putting themselves at physical risk. I mean, I just lost a friend of mine not too long ago who was quadruple jabbed, and he was on the Ozempic, and he came down with my very first in-person case of turbo cancer. And he was like, my back hurts. He went from fine to my back hurts to gone within 90 days. And that's kind of the thing. I'm like, okay, well, that was a choice. You saw the thing and you chose to do this. But it wasn't like a quote unquote murder, because it's not, they don't have the ability to do that. I don't think that's part of the game. I don't know what game we're playing. I don't know where we are. I know that there's a ton of stuff above our pay grade. And I know that because my brain just wants to solve all these problems, I know that we're on the precipice of something fucking huge. And I can't put my finger on it, but I'm seeing all of the pieces come together inch by inch. And every single one of these conversations is another piece of the puzzle that's coming together. And again, the powers that be, it's not one person. It's a general ethos. It's a general energetic connection, like your charge. I'm assuming right now that you are sitting in a house that has perfect internet connection, yet you're choppy, you're blurry, and you've cut out. But I would assume that 9 times out of 10, you look at your data bars or reception bars and you're at full pop.
Yeah,
so,
full pop.
Yeah, so you're coming through choppy and unclear right now. And so, you know, these are the things that like the energies know. And so the fact that you're unclear, the fact that you and I, for the first time in 400 episodes, I had massive problems connecting with you, connecting with anybody. Like, it took 45 minutes to get a recording started. That's never happened before. And even to the point where even beforehand, I double checked and checked with ChatGPT and checked the map that with the time changes, the daylight savings, that your time and my time were exact. And I was off by an hour. Like, what the hell? I'm never off by an hour, you know? So that stuff fascinates me. And you can't put that on this one person did that. You can't put that on Tim down at the internet company has a button over Guy's house that is going to fuck up Adam's ability to understand what the time shift is.
I think you're right. Yeah, there isn't one person responsible for doing this. It's a group of people, and the people underneath those are the ones that orchestrate the actions because they're following orders. Now they'll think, I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware, but they are about to start teaching in school misinformation classes. So they're going to be telling children that people that like you and I are not people that should be listened to. They mustn't watch or engage with anything that we put out there because it is misinformation. This is about to be taught at school. So the teacher
don't
is...
look up. Movie, don't look up.
Yeah. So the teacher's just doing their job. And above the teacher, the head teacher's just doing their job, and above them and so on. But it's right at the very top where this is orchestrated. And I agree that nobody out there is pressing a button just because you and I are speaking. But the system is more than capable of causing an interruption or an issue because the system's been programmed to detect these things. But with regard to whether or not they can outright kill someone, I sort of fall into two camps with that. Well, first of all, I do believe that they follow some kind of karmic retribution. They do fear that they can't actually outright kill someone. They've got to present us with the truth and give us an option.
Yes.
But then that goes out the window if you look at carpet bombing the Gaza Strip and what they're doing in Iran. They are.
Now, here's the thing with that. My take on that is the idea, if I want, picture me talking to you being like, these motherfuckers over here are doing some crazy shit. And I'm like, guy, they're crazy, guy, they're crazy. Now, I don't happen to be just randomly talking to you about how crazy they are. I have hunted you down in a way that I know by the time you're standing in front of me, you're crazy enough to kill someone. So because I can't kill them, all I can do is share influence, and it's not even my karmic guilt if those people over there die because of something crazy unhinged Guy Anderson did, right? So when you're saying that the carpet bombing and all that sort of stuff, and they're doing all that, yeah, these people are just following orders. So the very same people that were following orders before, if you're in the military, and no offense to military people, because I know a ton of military people that are actually waking up going, what the fuck, this can't be real, right? But to those who are absolutely blind and more than willing to start waving the guns around, they're specifically doing it. So yeah, it's not the same guy that is influencing us yet not killing us, what have you, is influencing war and not killing at the same time. Because if you look at all wars, it's just old men in chairs making young men kill other young men. For what gain? I don't know. It's above my pay grade. I don't have these answers.
So do you believe that that's enough detachment for them to be able to wash their hands of it and say, well, they didn't directly do anything, even though they are ultimately responsible for what took place?
Yes. And how I can say that easily is before we talked on the show, you and I were talking about eating meat, how a small piece of beef is good and substantiating versus a hormonally jacked up cow that you can get from the grocery. How you get more sustenance, you eat less, and you're more full from it. At the end of the day, that is a living animal that we've killed for our own enjoyment to eat. That's not to say that we shouldn't be carnivores, because I don't have an answer for that. Prime example, for my body type, the carnivore diet works better than any other diet I've ever been on in my entire life. Why am I not on it right now? Well, fascinatingly enough, I'm constantly on the road. I'm constantly busy. That sounds like an excuse, and anyone could say that's an excuse. Sure, I could plan better. I could prepare better. I could give in less to my urges, essentially hunger. But I'm still eating animals. And so the people that are doing these things, they aren't us. The best I can figure is they aren't us. Now, we've talked about ancient aliens. We've talked about the Pleiadians, the reptilians, the Greys. There's documentation, even, with the White House that they're releasing, that there's like 4 different species of aliens. It's been in the media all over the place. They've been telling us this shit all the time. They look at any music video from the 90s and they were telling you this stuff, like the Freaks Silverchair. It's directly in your face. God Save the Queen, directly in your face. Like all of this stuff is, but it's like, oh, that's just a song. It's just camp. It's just lore. It's not a thing. So I am not anti-meat. I stand by that firmly. I love meat. I think it's delicious. A little bit of HP sauce. Hells yeah. We don't even get the HP sauce. So that care package we were talking about, your signed books, if you could just tuck a little HP sauce in there and ship that over. It's not like you and me doing that. Like it's not like some human is now orchestrating this. It's somebody who knows better. It would be the equivalent of you and me having this cow go and murder that cow so we don't have to do it. Right? We don't view cows on the same level as humans, you and I. I love them. They're adorable. They're beautiful. I hate that we eat them because they're so stunning just standing out in the field being beautiful. But this is life. And so I believe that to be the case for whoever's above the humans in the food chart. I don't think that they view us as anything other than cattle.
I agree.
Karmically, your karma and my karma is that we can't go and kill a human, but we can kill a cow. And so like they couldn't go and kill, a reptilian, like I don't know, let's just say Donald couldn't kill Hillary, right? But they could certainly convince humans to kill other humans without bursting into their karmic cycle. And because they're aware of our karmic cycle, this is the same thing as halal. We've lost him again. So I'll finish that thought for everybody else. It's the same thing as halal beef. That sounds strange when you say halal. You're like, oh no, that's religious. Well, it's not. It's just a blessed way of killing the creature, a blessed way of draining the creature. It's just more pure than any other way of doing it. And so I can't imagine it being the same thing. So for me, and I know now I'm just talking to you guys, the audience, because he's not here with us right now. Hopefully he comes back. But for me, with regards to that, karmically and energetically, they're not in the same playing field as us. It's just not a thing. And I think right now we are going to end this episode. And I'm going to call this one part 1 because this is clearly going to keep happening today. Today is just not meant to be. We got some great content, some good quality stuff out, but we're gonna have him back very soon for part 2. Hopefully next week. I just don't know right now because this has never happened before. We're in a spot where we're in uncharted territory. We're talking about stuff that is glitching out the matrix at the moment in time. So I will say this, ladies and gentlemen, expect us to return with Guy very soon. And again, I don't even know right now if I'm going to air this episode now until I've got him back and until we've finished it. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. So if you get this and it's not done, well, you'll just have to wait. If you get this and then the follow-up comes next week, well, we're laughing. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today, apparently. So, in the infamous words of Red Green, keep your stick on the ice. Okay, ladies, there's going to be a bit of an edit here or a crunch because I think I ended the last episode. Wasn't sure what I was going to do with it because we had all of the technical problems under the sun. When you start talking to, I want to say, what's a good term for you? Historical geniuses? Somebody who
I'm a conspiracy theorist.
Somebody who can see through it, though. Yeah. And
I wear that with pride, that label. A lot of people don't like it, but it describes what I am. Well,
I don't dislike it. If anything, it's now certainly a more of a badge than anything else. And I remember too when COVID was ripe, our account got the most followings because the internet censors put up this account often shares false information. There was a warning on my account.
I've had that myself a few times.
And so I was like, wow, people started following me because of that. And when you realize like we had this conversation, and I don't 100% remember exactly everything we talked about on the first half of the show. So if we repeat ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, just know that we're doing it because we love you. That is correct. the whole disassemblement of good versus evil has been an interesting play in my life, because I look at this stuff and you think about all the stuff that we sort of stand against as conspiracy theorists, or as some would say, right wing nut jobs. The beautiful thing to me is there's no more middle ground, right? You're either a right wing nut job or you're a liberal left extremist. There's no whatever happened to just whatever. It is what it is. I agree with some of your policies. I don't agree with some of the other policies. Like, we've lost that somewhere along the way. But when you look at the conservatives, who are for the most part just a leave me alone generation, it's funny to think that all of these rules and regulations, the overt vaccines, the abortions, all this sort of stuff, we can fight against them, sure. But like, honestly, what's the point? Because none of the conservative people I know are going to be getting abortions. And that's a very hot topic, right? Because people want to attack you. Well, what about this and what about that? And there's always mitigating circumstances, and everything is to be taken into consideration. The fact that I have to quantify that by making this statement right now is a hilarious piece of Americana, or I guess world honor now, because we're all sort of melting into one world government anyway, as much as we're trying to avoid it. And what's so wrong with one world government? Sorry, I'm on a bit of a tirade right now. Normally I get an intro, but we got everything all askew. What's your take on that? And by that, I mean, the media is pushing COVID vaxes. We know COVID vaxes are potentially dangerous. Abortions are permanent. But to me, everyone following along with this liberal ideology, they're eliminating their numbers. Like, moving forward, if every liberal is now gay, gays can't reproduce, right? For the most part. I mean, mathematically, if we're talking about hims and hers. Vaccines are hurting people, and that's just a conspiracy. We don't know what we're talking about. It's all for entertainment purposes only. Actually, before I carry on with this, because we are back in the studio now.
Disclaimer. If you're going to soundbite any of this podcast, you must soundbite it in its entirety for consistency and context.
Thank you. So what's your take on the idea that if you lead a very liberal life, you're eliminating your lineage from moving forward?
I've never heard anybody propose that before.
It's just something that just rattles around in my head.
No, I've never heard. It's not something I've considered. It's certainly a statement I've never heard anybody use before. But I don't give it an awful lot of thought, frankly.
I would assume not. But as I propose that to you, knowing what you know, do you have an opinion on that? It's okay.
On what? Yeah. On what though? On the element of that?
I guess on the idea that get your vaccines, have your abortions, become a gay and lesbian. All of the, especially in Canada, that is like the very liberal platform. This is what we have to do to be a great society. And I firmly believe that if you trail every single conspiracy back to its absolute core and root, it comes back to population control. But if you are successful in convincing your followers to become gay and lesbian, to get the vaccines, to be on the birth control, you're eliminating future numbers. And so arbitrarily, a conservative mindset person would be like, I don't care what you do. It doesn't affect me. I'm not going to get vaccinated. I'm not going to worry about abortions. And I'm not going to be, I'm more than likely not going to be on birth control, because we know it's a massive contraceptive, chemical castration. There are other ways to do things. So my numbers as a collective and as a mindset are going to expand as we move into the future. But the liberal agenda and mindset, those numbers would dwindle. So by being a successful platform, you're eliminating the people that will vote for you in the future. I don't know. Maybe I'm just out of my mind and left field when I say these things.
Well, if you're referring to when you just said you're eliminating people that would vote for you in the future, the elections are rigged. I mean, it's already played out, and planned a very long time in advance. They don't count our votes, so it doesn't make any difference what happens. Whoever's going to get in that's already decided. I mean, the Bilderberg Group through Chatham House put most politicians in power. So none of that makes any difference. But yes, we're being pushed into a very strange world, and I personally couldn't care less whether what sexuality someone is. I have no. I don't know why Zoom does this. It moves me. There, it's doing it again. It moves me in and out. I'm going to change that setting in a moment. It's of no interest to me. But I just think that do what you like. Do what you like. As long as it doesn't harm anybody else, do what you want. I'm not woke by any means. I don't get it. But I respect people's decision to be what they want to be. I just don't want to necessarily have it thrust in front of me. And I've just got, I think that there's a lot of distraction. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that are happening that cause division. And this is a good example of that. But with regard to the vaccine, people took it for lots of different reasons. Some because they believe everything the narrative tells them.
Right.
Some because they feared they were going to lose their job or were threatened with losing their job. And some people because they were stuck and needed to leave the country they were in and couldn't travel. So I think if you then repeatedly took the vaccines, the boosters, then I would question why, because I would imagine anybody would see a red flag if they're told that they need to continually have a booster for something. Mm-hmm. But my argument with the vaccinated that became quite aggressive towards me was always the same thing. If you believe it's effective, then how am I endangering you by not taking it? Because you're safe.
Yeah, you're vaccinated. You're safe.
Yeah, so I'm of no threat to you. The only reason you could be concerned about me not having it is if you care about my well-being, and you clearly don't. You've demonstrated that. So why are we having this conversation? It seems nonsensical. But I don't really spend too much time looking into these things. Everything repeats itself. It's circular. It goes round and round and round. And what we're going through now is a great reset in just a technologically advanced way from 1776. Right. So depopulation, it's all there. The World Economic Forum talk about it. We have the Georgia Guidestones. We know what they're doing. Some people argue, why don't they just wipe us all out? But it's not that easy, because they're going to have to instruct people to do things that might not necessarily want to. And there is a chance that if we catch wind of what's going on, we'll rise up against them. So it's a slow burn. They don't want blood on their hands either. They'd rather other people did this. And we still need to provide an infrastructure for them.
Yeah, somebody once said that Earth is basically just a giant Carnival cruise ship for the rich, and all of us working class are just their staff. Oh, where are you going?
Drifting I like that. Yeah, it's very weird. I must just quickly jump on the camera settings for that, because I don't know why it does it.
Oh, I don't use video that often anyway, so I doubt we'll even come into. But maybe for you for the future. What was I going to say? So you actually posted something recently that caught my attention. The movie that you went to see. I'm watching the trailers for this, and I'm seeing how this one feels to me like another Don't Look Up style of movie, where it's just massive amounts of truth in plain sight. And so I read a bit of your blurb, and I'd love to hear your 2 cents on that, a movie review ish. But what did you see? What caught your eye in Disclosure Day?
Well, first of all, my initial thought was, sorry, my little dog needs to get down.
Yeah, buddy.
Go on then, little man. The first thing that I saw that caught my attention was the fact that they were communicating through certain people. So the main character was receiving information and from what appears to be a grey. And you don't know that at the time. And that immediately reminded me of what Nikola Tesla said, that he was receiving information from Venusians, that they were sending him all of the if you like, the blueprints subliminally, so he could then create his what became patents, his inventions, and that it was sort of an upload that he was getting. So I thought that was quite interesting, because if if that's possible, then they're kind of showing you that so there is this possibility that we can communicate or have information sent to us by these alien entities. And Valiant Thor, when he came, I think it was 1957, when he allegedly spent 3 years, he arrived from Venus, spent 3 years at the Pentagon. He was saying that they had been talking to people for some time and communicating through them. Now, of course, I don't know whether or not that's true. I wasn't there. But that was the first thing I saw, that this alien being was communicating to someone, just a random individual. But perhaps random's the wrong word, because they were a news anchor. I think they were mainly the weather, but they were in a position where they could broadcast, had access to a major network, so they could actually sit in front of a large audience of people and share this stuff. So I thought that was quite interesting. There's also Leave the World Behind. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but there's a clip in that film where this deer is in the garden, and this deer is kind of knows something's happening and is trying to seek shelter, almost like it wants to come in. It wants the humans to protect it. And there's an element of that in this film as well. That's mirrored. There's also a scene with a fox. It's quite strange. They've got these animal scenes in it, which I wasn't expecting, and one with a bird as well. Everything changes the moment this bird flies into this news reader. It's Emily Blunt, this newsreader's apartment. That's the moment everything changes, and she starts speaking in Russian. Really strange. So there's lots of sort of references to animals. Like I said, I saw the connection between how she was receiving information and how Tesla said he did. But what's most interesting, I think, in hindsight, looking back at my post, and I spoke to somebody earlier on today during an interview I had, and what I didn't put in the post, but I have in the comments, is that actually they show what is allegedly real footage going back all the way back to Roswell, real genuine footage that we have been, we've been subjected to, that's been leaked, or released purposely. So we think it's leaked, of what happened to the Greys. We've seen them on operating tables. We've seen them dead, in body bags and so on. And they did it in such a way to make you feel sorry for them. Like these were benevolent beings coming here for peace, in peace, for with good intentions. And there we are, dissecting them, injecting them, pinning them down while they're screaming and doing all sorts of unpleasant things to them. So you sort of walk away from the film feeling sorry for these Greys, when actually, from what we are told, these are nefarious beings. Bloody camera's doing it again.
I love it.
So yeah, I awful lot of propaganda. So for me, it links really to Project Bluebeam, and I find it strange that this film coincides with the photographs of Trump. First of all, we had that really badly created AI image of him walking along with a very tall type grey being with handcuffs on. And now we've seen the Nordic aliens with him. So I think in one setting it looked like a studio, and the other it looked like they're walking into woods or a garden somewhere. This is, I think, getting the public ready for a big reveal, whether that's Project Bluebeam and a staged alien invasion or something else. I think that's what this is doing. I think it's preparing for that.
Well, we talked about this to people listening to the show. You're just hearing a one giant solid episode, but it's taken us months to get this together. The internet just keeps breaking. But the last time we were talking, which was this time, so same episode, ladies and gentlemen, but yeah, last time you and I were talking, you mentioned, or we were talking about the UFC /Portal, and then the World Cup soccer going on the 250th anniversary of the United States in Philadelphia, in the Liberty Bell. and your take is the blue beam aliens is something is going to be released on that. We touched on that briefly, and so I'm recycling it back because just to refresh your mind, we did talk about that. My curiosity in this at this moment in time with you is, it's one of those things where it's like, I wanted to believe in aliens, but I can't now because the government's pushing it, quote unquote. These are the memes going around right now. So, and when I was younger, I loved the X-Files. I loved the idea of aliens. I thought you'd have to be absolutely stupid if you didn't think that there were life on other planets and that other planets existed. But, as we grow older, you realize that the high likelihood of there being other planets, as delivered in the heliocentric system, is not a thing, from my standpoint. You also touched on, in your write-up, you touched on how you think that Emily Blunt is one of them or something. But that's a whole other topic. I'm curious.
Inverted.
Yeah, inverted. Yeah. So I have a theory on inverted as well. You can't just go around inverting absolutely everybody. I have a feeling that they are. My theory is that and this goes to aliens as well / inverted, is that we were led to believe that humans were the top of the food chain. We were the top being in this realm. But I don't think we are. I don't think that we are. I think that we're led to believe this. I think this is all a wonderful little ruse. But I think that the trannies, the transvestigations and all that sort of stuff, how we can say this person's a man, that person's a woman. I think that they are, what's the term? Hermaphrodite? I feel like they are a dual sex entity from creation. That's why I think that, a lot of these celebrities that do weird things, that are constantly posing. I mean, we brought it up the other day, you had said, how can somebody go out and cause damage? And we were about to get into quote unquote chemtrails. How can a pilot go out there and fly and dump chemtrails on us and then denounce it? Like what kind of human being allows that kind of chaos to take place to, all of the men? And there's articles that say, well, these guys don't care about men. They're war torn. They have PTSD, all that sort of stuff. But I firmly believe, and I think you and I even touched on it, that, or maybe I was having another conversation with somebody, that like the idea of eating venison, baby deer, isn't great, but we've all had a slice of venison and it's tasty. And then we find out that it's Bambi, or veal or whatever. And so it's not right to do that, but we do it. And so I think that these other entities don't view us as worthwhile. They view us the same way we would view cattle, and it's unfortunate that we view cattle the way we view cattle, but we do. Yeah. So that's kind of my take on it, that I don't believe in aliens as delivered, as in they're not coming from another planet. I don't believe in the transvestigation, as in this was once a woman, now it's a man. I believe that there's so much more of the story that we haven't been told, and that's the part that's keeping the illusion sort of intact. What's your take on all that? There's a loaded question, but I definitely I love picking your brain. Sorry.
With regard to the chemtrails, I think that there are probably a few scenarios playing out there. One is that some people that have observed some of the planes suggest that actually they're drones, because some of the maneuvers that they've conducted would actually cause us problems, pulling too many Gs, so you'd pass out. Mm-hmm. But that's in some cases. I've also been told that these people are exactly as you described, just mentally unwell and have a hatred, perhaps carrying PTSD, have a hatred for mankind.
Yeah.
And know exactly what they're doing and are very happy about it. There are some people, I'm sure, that believe that what they're doing is actually helping us. So I think you've probably got a mixed bag there. But it's difficult to know who's who. How do we decipher that? So my argument has always been, with regard to chemtrailing, that we find out who the pilots are.
Mm-hmm.
So we go on to flight planners, and look at what these, get the details of these planes, find out where they've taken off from, and then find out the company that owns them, and then go to the companies online and have a look at the staff, see if the pilots are mentioned anywhere or listed, or the directors, and we ostracize them. We stop, we protest outside their buildings. We refuse to serve them in our shops and in our bars and restaurants. And we completely ostracize these people and their entire families from society, because only by because I don't condone violence of any sort, But by ostracizing them and their families, they will realize that actually we can make their life rather unpleasant for them without having to do anything other than ignoring they exist. So I think we take the fight to their offices, to their headquarters, to the airfields where they take off, and we start naming and shaming the people flying these planes and running the companies. Everybody, you know, from the person who mops the floor to the chief executive, because they're all part and parcel of the same organization. So I do think that, and by the person who mops the floor, I'm not saying this is just a pure a humble cleaner. I think everybody within that organization needs to be ostracized, because then hopefully they will go and work for someone else. So it could be the person on reception. They know what the company does. Go and work on reception for a company that isn't doing what it's doing to us and doing to this planet. So I think that's what I would personally suggest we do. There's a petition going around here in the UK to stop the chemtrails that's being presented to the government. Won't make any difference. Petitions very rarely do, because they don't care. So that is a problem, and you could argue that some of these people are damaged. Fine, but then if they're that damaged and in that kind of situation, then they shouldn't really be flying a plane or doing anything that requires that level of, I suppose, danger. What they are actually doing. They're flying a craft. So, the whole thing stinks. But that's my thought on it. We ostracize everybody. We protest outside their buildings. Stop them getting in. Stop them actually being able to access their own car park and get in their own building. I don't know. But anything that doesn't resort to violence. With regard to us being the if you like, top of the tree.
Yeah.
I would actually argue that the octopus is perhaps more intelligent than anything else that lives on this realm, to the best of our knowledge. And with regard to, and then perhaps followed by whales, maybe dolphins, but whales, I certainly think that they're far more intelligent than we realize. But the octopus, I think in one tentacle, the octopus has more intelligence and capability within a tentacle than we have in our entire brain. So I think there's probably a lot we could learn from those. With regard to where aliens come from, I think they've always been here. I think that's why we have these dumbs, because they're I think they're underground, and I think that they're also underwater, which could explain why we don't bother exploring very much of the oceans, but we're obsessed with going up, because whenever I'm told to look up, that's typically what you would do. If I said I saw an alien, a UFO, you'd think up. So when we're talking about Antarctica, we're talking about the south. I think everything's inverted. So if they say look up, we look down. If they say focus on the South Pole, we should focus on the North Pole. I think we do the opposite of whatever the narrative wants us to do.
Yeah, and that's a kick in the pants too, because the further into this rabbit hole you go, the further into these possibilities, they in and of themselves become the misdirect. Like you said, we've heard 1,000 things about the Antarctic Treaty. So the righteous brain goes, well, all of these people are at war with everybody, yet they've all signed a piece of paper that says nobody's going to colonize the South. And in the interim, the Nazi symbol of hate was once a symbol of peace. The swastika is also an image, essentially, of the four rivers of the north, with apparently the Tower of Babel in the middle. So old world maps have, I can't trust any map, period. Even the ones that are like, well, it's not this, it's this. Well, that's even a distraction in and of itself. But I remember seeing, centers of old world maps that had what they claim to be the Garden of Eden, and the Garden of Eden being here inside Earth realm, could have very easily been, the centerpiece to our centerpiece. And so if we're inside an encapsulated ice wall, for example, and there's more realms on the outside of it. That fascinates me too. The reflection of the moon, the man in the mirror. They say all that stuff is indicative of more Earth. We even call extraterrestrials or aliens extraterrestrials, but that just means more Earth. Neil Armstrong backwards is alien. Neil A is alien. Like it's like they throw all this stuff in our faces, and they wouldn't do that unless the idea was to have a grand mystery. I don't know how to talk to a quote unquote normie and tell them that there is zero proof of a globe Earth. It can't be proven. There's zero proof of it. And, that blows people's minds. So the immediate statement then is, well, you're a flat earther. And the funny thing about that is flat Earth debunks globe Earth unequivocally, but flat Earth has its own holes. So if you get stuck on flat Earth, well, that was an intentional statement as well. So if we're looking at globe Earth or flat Earth, we're not looking at a truth or a reality. And again, aliens to me are from extra Earth. They're extraterrestrials. They come from somewhere. And I also don't believe anymore in the solidity. Is that the word I'm looking for? I don't believe in solid. Let's just say that. So there was one of the things I used to believe for a very long time was that when they broke apart the atom, the inside of the atom was quarks, quarks, and quasons, which meant that the building block of society was energy, first and foremost. When now we're going infinite greatness / infinite smallness. And if by doing so, we break into energy, which means then theoretically we live on a holodeck. So for years and years and years, I understood unequivocally that we were in an energetic realm. I've recently come across some information that's been able to back itself up with numerous posts. That is a statement that says the atom itself, and I don't know why I never bothered to question this. I just didn't until I read these articles. The atom itself is a conspiracy theory, as in the building block of society that you and I are familiar with doesn't actually exist. Look at this. I haven't used this thing in forever, and I'm getting a warning to upgrade my Zoom. What the hell is this all about? Anyway, so that to me is fascinating because that changes a lot of my other premise. Are you familiar with this? The atom isn't real. Also, follow up to that. What do you truly believe from your understanding of who we are, where we are, and what we're doing? What do you believe aliens truly are?
Right. So there's a couple of questions there. First of all, with the atom, no, I haven't heard that. But actually, I thought you were going to lead into something else there. I've heard people saying recently, because I've from one of my books is talking about cloning, the origins of mankind, the capture of our DNA by companies like Ancestry.com. I've heard a few people recently saying that DNA isn't a thing. There is no such thing as DNA. It's all made up. Absolutely, everything is ultimately energy. Everything's energy. I don't believe there's anything. No, it's not. Technically speaking, nothing is solid. It is all just energy. And of course, you've then got that whole theory that is a table if you can't see it? Right. Is that tree a tree if you can't see it? And with regard to DNA, we've also got this really ridiculous story that we carry junk DNA, that we've been created in this perfect image, yet we carry junk DNA. I don't believe that for a moment. Where do aliens come from? And what are they? Well, I did speak to somebody recently regarding the Greys, and they said that they were actually the end result of what were the Igigi. So the Anunnaki, who bring their slave race here from wherever to mine for them, they started building settlements underground. They rebel. Most people know the story about the Anunnaki and the Igigi. They rebel. We are created as a replacement for the Igigi. The Igigi stay underground in their dwellings, although they did mate with some of us and created things like the Cyclops and so on, apparently. but they remained underground, and slowly, because of the lack of exposure to sunlight, became over 250,000 years, they become the greys as we see them today, or as we think we see them today, or what's presented to us. And that's why there is this connection to these dumb sites, because they're going underground, and these apparently can't come to the surface because they need a different mix of gases, perhaps more based upon, I don't know, um, methane, sulfur. I don't know what specifically, but they can't actually breathe our air. And I heard someone talking about this recently, and it kind of made sense. And they said that it was the Greys, which were originally the Igigi, that had created AI. And the way that the government interacts with them is through these dumps. Because if you think about it, why do we need to build underground bases? Why underground? Why are all of these dump sites, deep underground military bases, required? Why can't we just have them above ground? What is going on that needs to be conducted underground? They're secure sites. No one can see what's going on. So why go that far down?
I have a theory.
Sorry.
So my theory is they already existed. And
yes, I don't doubt that for one moment.
Yeah, and so this is my take on this is the Tartarians and the melting buildings. I think we're staring at multiple resets. I think that a lot of mountain ranges and islands are giants that sort of laid down and died in one general reset or one incantation of this realm/reality. And I also think that the building melt is another massive electrical discharge from here. When you're flying over Canada, for example, and you're flying into the mountain ranges, so you're flying over Saskatchewan, Alberta, before you get to the mountain ranges, there are gullies, very similar to, but not quite as extensive as my brain went retarded there. The Grand Canyon, So, but when you're in the plane, it 100% looks like you hit a piece of wood with an electrical charge. So all of these gullies and divots that look 1,000% like electrical discharge lead up to the mountains. So if we're looking at building melt and it came from below, not above, we're also looking right now at building melt coming from above. We're looking at DEWs burning down neighborhoods in California and that sort of stuff. And we're also throwing a red herring with the blue roofs and all that beautiful distraction. But I think that all of these DUMs existed. I think that ultra high speed travel exists, so anyone can get to anywhere from anywhere underground on, it wouldn't be too hard for Trump to get from the White House to London in less than half an hour, that sort of thing. Like, I think that there are massive amounts of transportation that exist down there. I say this too because during COVID, there was a huge thing about the dead bodies that were coming out of, quote unquote, the hospital, but they weren't. There was just piles of dead bodies coming out of an underground inlet that was leading to the harbor. They had the SS, whatever it was, parked in the New York harbor, and they were just unloading thousands of what appeared to be bodies under sheets. So I didn't mean to cut you off there, but that was sort of my 2 cents on it. These DUMs, what does that stand for again? Underground
Deep
military
underground
bases?
military base.
Deep underground military base. DUM. They already exist, and they're part of a previous civilization, a mud flood, something that was at one point on the surface but is now trapped underneath.
Yeah, I think they've been there for a very long time. But my question, I suppose, to myself, because no one can answer this really unless they've been in one, is why do they need to be underground? There's no reason for them to be underground, not that far down, unless, we can say the mud floods might have partially buried some levels, but they go a lot further than that. There are floors that go on forever inside these. Why do they need to go that far down? So, and my guess is because they are on the very lower levels, working with beings that live underground that cannot come to the surface due to the gases within our air. So, I'm sure they can with equipment and so on, gas masks, whatever, tanks, you know what I mean? But My guess is that they're underground so they can actually work alongside with other beings that can't breathe as we can normally on the surface. So that's why I think they're underground. But who knows? But lots of civilizations refer to underground beings, people that have come, like the ant people, for example. Lots of civilizations do. So, and it may well be that over the years, places like Turkey, for example, have sort of underground built into the rocks themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They have underground dwellings. They've built almost towns under there. What if they actually stayed underground or continue to go deeper inside? But I think there are tunnels everywhere. And with regard to being able to move from one part of the world to another quickly, yeah, I have no doubt that they have maglevs or some kind of technology that's probably Tartarian that enables them to do that. Look at Musk and the Hyperloop. He's going to be building all of these tunnels, and people are going to be able to travel extremely quickly from A to Z. I think that he is basically reopening something that was already there.
Yeah.
So and I think that the star forts that we see may have been hubs for this. If you like, a sort of a terminal, So there are tunnels everywhere. Every single town and city in the world appears to have tunnels, but the backstory to all of them is weak.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the same thing. But when we're really looking at history, the prime example, the Photoshop, for lack of a better term, on the skies, they whitewash the skies. So I think they're pulling Zeppelins out of the skies, removing that form of history. They've introduced a band called Led Zeppelin, which was basically the celebration of the destruction of one piece of machinery that we'll never try to use again because so many people ended up getting injured, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that, free energy was absolutely everywhere and was abundant in this realm at one point. I don't know why there would be a takeover. I don't know why, I don't know what would create the powers that be. I wish there was an outlet. You had mentioned on the first time you were on the show, about 8 months ago, being part of the Masons. And you sort of took that to a degree, and you learned what you could learn, but didn't see certain things in and amongst your time there. I wonder if there is, an interview with the vampire or interview with the devil type of thing, or outwitting the devil. They talk about sitting down and having a conversation with an elite. I would love to find an elite or a conversation that takes place, because they can't offer up information, but they can certainly answer your questions. And I want to know, you would have to assume that at this stage in the game that there's somebody somewhere that has an ample amount of numbers or answers that's willing to share them with you, no matter how crazy they look. Because the truth, in my opinion, always feels like the truth. You can sort of sense a deception a mile away, but all the deceptions nowadays just sort of tie into everything else. So it's like, how do we really, really understand it? But it to me, it's such a fascinating moment in time to be here. Do you think, and you talked about Elon Musk opening up a tunnel that already exists. Do you think that we also touched on the 250th anniversary in Philadelphia, and then Star Forts again was something that you mentioned, and I literally just came across an ad somewhere that was saying, we're going to pay you $20,000 to move to our small town because it's dwindling. And it's literally built on a star fort. I'm like, that would be so amazing to go and see that architecture. Because inside the star forts, you also see a lot of those, I don't know what they're called, but from above, they look like potholes. They look like a ton of little puddles kind of all around the star fort, as if somebody threw a ton of huge rocks, at the star fort, and they all created little potholes, or craters. And that all goes hand in hand with that. I'm all over the place for sure. But what's your take on Star Forts, Stargates, and what could potentially be happening in the coming days with regards to FIFA, with regards to aliens, with regards to Bluebeam? We touched on this briefly earlier in the show, which was a couple weeks ago, or which was a week ago for us. But what's your take on that?
Okay. Well, star forts, there are 319 of them that are recognized.
Amazing.
The Smithsonian tell me that they are defensive fortresses, but cannot provide me with an explanation as to why they were built in the way that they were. Because when it comes to defensive fortresses, my argument is why do they need to align to constellations?
Mm-hmm.
What military strategy does that connect to? Why do they resonate inside at 432 hertz? How does that help when you're fighting an enemy?
Right.
And why, if they're defensive fortresses, do so many of them exist in places that have never seen battle, that aren't strategic at all? So
Right.
that doesn't make sense either. But to give them credit, they did say that they do not know why they are built like they are. They cannot explain that. My guess is that what we're seeing is the tip of an iceberg, that those structures go much further down than we understand. I think that they're all connected. So when they were all fully operational, you had the entire Earth, the Earth that we know, what we're allowed to see of it, because I actually think it's considerably larger than we've been told. So it just is a side issue.
That's my follow-up question to you is I want to know after everything that you've researched, where you think we are and what you think we're doing. But that's follow-up to this.
Okay. Well, I might as well answer that now.
Sure.
We're given two options. Typically, with most things,
Yep.
North Pole, South Pole, aliens up, aliens down,
Left,
blah,
right.
blah, blah. Left and right, yeah.
Political, yeah.
So, two poles of a magnet, and we put them into power by electing them. It's all to do with power and electricity and energy, isn't it?
Right.
So, with regard to the Earth, we're told that we've got two choices, typically, that either it's flat, you're a flat earther, or you're a globist. You think that we're spinning on a ball, or it is flat round. No, I don't have to decide either of those options. Just because they're presented to me doesn't mean I have to pick one. So I don't pick either of those. I think there are other possibilities. One is I lean to it possibly being a torus, that we are in what could be a donut, and the North Pole and South Pole are connected. That's a sort of an entry and exit into the inner Earth. The other possibility that I bounce around is that it is round, but it's thousands of times bigger than we've been told, and our little bit appears flat because it's so vast. So we can't look into the distance. I'll give you a classic example.
Yeah.
My dad grew up in the southeast of England in a place called Dover. Now that is the closest point towards France, the shore of France, and that is where a lot of the action took place during the Second World War. So on a clear day, you can stand on the edge of Dover on a clear day in the summer, and you can see France. Now, with binoculars, you can see the beach. It's 24 miles away.
Right.
That does not allow for the curvature of the Earth.
Correct.
At all. But it wouldn't matter if the Earth is a lot bigger than we've been told. So it may well be that it appears flat because it's so much bigger. Right. And we are just in our own little dome that's sealed off with the ice wall. And there are these other continents and worlds, if you like, beyond this iced wall.
Correct.
So we are trapped in this dome, a little bit like what we've seen in the one. I think it was the Simpsons movie.
IPA.
Yeah, kind of that we are inside this. But for the flat earthers, it appears flat because it's so much bigger than we've been told.
Right.
And for the people that believe that we are on a ball, maybe it is, but it just doesn't appear to be that way. As for whether or not we're spinning, I don't really get that. I don't buy it. The other thing I would say is we've always heard that argument, which I agree with. Why is it that if you were looking through the Hubble telescope, a better argument, if we are up in space and we are looking down at the Earth, and let's say that I am right now in a position where I can zoom in on England and I can see people walking along, cars driving and so on. If I then zoom in on Australia, why doesn't that look upside down?
Yeah.
So that kind of doesn't really make any sense to me. And also, if we were spinning, I don't understand how it would be possible for us to pierce water to puncture it.
Well, that's the thing about spinning, right? They throw bastardization into absolutely everything. They reverse it. Theoretically, if we were spinning the way that they say we are, all the water in the world would pool around the equator. That's just physics. The funny thing too about up and down is uh, there's no, the idea of up and down doesn't make any sense. But if you stand on your head, for example, the blood rushes down. So you were never meant to stand on your head. It's not like you can just walk around on your hands and your body's still going to be fine. You were designed to walk around on your feet. So your blood flow goes the way it does. Your body is equated to being right side up. However, there's an up and down in space, right? So where the science goes for us to have the axis that creates the seasons, he's doing with air quotes, we have to be tilted and we have to be spinning like this, right? But that's absurd because this tilt here implies up and down. Straight up and straight down, perfect. But to have a tilted axis implies up and down in space. And that's an impossibility. Just like every single space show you've ever met where the spaceships meet in space, there is no up or down in space, but all the ships always come together nose to nose. Never like this, And so they're like, oh, well, they've got inertial dampeners and they've got this and they've got that. And this is how it all works and blah, blah, blah. And so I laugh at that because even when you start questioning the absurdity of space, the infinite grandness of quote unquote space, and the fact that it's quote unquote an absolute and complete vacuum, and nothing can travel in an absolute and complete vacuum because you're not pushing off anything. There's no inertia, there's no momentum, there's no nothing. It doesn't work like that. And then people will say things like, oh, solar sails. Okay, sure, whatever. But this idea of space exists, and it's a bastardization of itself to allow you to be confused once you see past it, but to allow it to fit your narrative when you've never asked the question. So when you say, I'm interested in your donut theory, because the only other time I've heard that was when Homer Simpson said it was like a donut, and then he took a bite of Earth donut. But I'm interested in how that would mathematically work if we were the shape of a donut, or how that could be a possibility in your realm.
Well, so I think that I personally think that there is a possibility that we access the inner Earth, if you like, through the North Pole and the South Pole. So if we are on a spherical or perhaps more circular realm, then that is something that I think makes more sense. And that might be why there are no flyover zones. Now,
Interesting.
So it's just something that I bounce around. Now, this isn't my theory. This isn't my research.
Oh, we're just spitballing right here. Yeah.
This is something that I think has legs. I think there is a possibility that it is a Homer Simpson donut, and that is how that is how they are able to travel. So we get to the inner Earth through these, if you like, portals. It might explain the Northern Lights to an extent. There might be, a connection there. Who knows? But that's just one option. But I sort of lean more towards it being just a lot larger than we've been led to believe, significantly larger. And there may well be continents here on what we call Earth that we are not aware of because of the restriction put in place as to where we can fly to and where, and shipping lanes and so on. So there might be places out there that contain different forms of life that we're just not privy to.
So let me ask you a super deep question here. Let's go right back to the beginning. We got Adam and Eve, we got evolution, we got cloning. What is your take on the origins of humanity?
Well, that was the subject of Rise of the Clones, my second book. That's basically what it's all about.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a couple of options, haven't we?
Yeah.
Again, we're presented with two,
Right.
and that is Darwin's theory of evolution that he wrote about in The Origin of Species, which was funded incidentally by the Vatican
And he's
because they
amazing,
wanted to.
big time.
Yeah, people often say, "Mate, this person's Mason, that's person's Mason." I never got high up enough for it to be really relevant to me, but
Mhm.
I don't know in what way that connects anything. But anybody walking around in those kind of positions of power that's able to get, in his case, something lobbied in Parliament, yes, then he's using that connection, and actually that what he petitioned for was for incest to be legalized
Oh, good for him.
because he practiced incest.
Yeah.
And this is the man who wrote The Origin of Species.
But wasn't that also wasn't that also um like a reptilian thing, like blue blood thing? Like I vaguely remember the royals only sleeping with their own blood because they wanted to keep their purity in the family. Or there's so many variations of that as we grow older, but I thought incest was normal amongst the quote unquote elites.
Yes, absolutely. But the problem is they have to farm out the womb because they've experienced, as we saw with Queen Victoria and the Habsburgs, they ultimately experience deformities, and in the end, it leads to their demise. And the Habsburgs are a good example of that. And of course, Queen Victoria, she had problems. So I think they farm out the womb. But with regard to the royal families, the Rothschilds took over in the 1800s. So every heir to the throne has been seeded by the Rothschilds since really the 1800s, early 1800s, around the time of the Napoleonic Wars.
Mm.
So and that was the interest rate that they paid. The payment terms were you're never going to be able to pay back this debt. So what we're going to do now is father the heir to the throne from here on in, and they've been doing it ever since. And that's why you can look at Jacob Rothschild, for example,
Mr. Burns.
Mr. Burns, and William, William Windsor. You can see there immediately the similarities. They all look the bloody same, this lot. So yes, they believe that they're different on a different level to us. I would actually go so far as to say they're possibly a slightly different being altogether.
Which is where we started. I love that full circle there.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked into this for years, and the information that was given to me, and this was the conclusion from it that was given to me, they cannot ascertain, so they can't determine at all with any accuracy what blood group the royal family are. All these parasitic families like the Rothschilds and so on, they cannot actually give us their blood group, and their DNA is slightly different too. So, with the suggestion that it's actually contains more of a reptilian element to it. So they lack creativity, they lack empathy, they're sort of almost cold-blooded, if you like, certainly cold-hearted.
Right. Yeah.
So they are different to us. So they see us as a slave race because that's originally what we were. We were created specifically as their slaves, for their descendants. So if you trace them all the way back to the Anunnaki, then, we replaced the Agigi as a slave race. And they have mated with us. I mean, Gilgamesh is a direct result of that. So they've mated with us along the years, but they keep their bloodline going. And perhaps the most powerful Anunnaki of them all was Marduk. And Marduk was also known as Amun-Ra, the Egyptian pharaoh. And Billy Carson's done a lot of work into this. When Marduk fled, or Amun-Ra fled, after what appears to be some kind of nuclear or plasma or direct energy war that took place, which is why the bent pyramid is scorched, and people are still finding nuclear glass
Where's the
in
bent
sand
pyramid?
around it in Egypt. So it's worth a Google. It's charred, completely black on one side, and people find nuclear glass in the sand quite often. So the temperature would have had to have been, incredible. When he fled after that war, he said that he was leaving everything behind to the children of Ra, and they were to be known in our language ultimately as the Ra childs, the children of Ra. So their bloodline goes back to the very beginning. And we were created as a slave race. The Sumerian texts are the earliest that we have, and they describe it very well. You've also got the poem, the Epic of Gilgamesh. And people often ask me, I've read the Bible, I've got the King James Bible, I've got the Ethiopian Bible, and I want to read more. I always say to them, read the Sumerian text. Read the Sumerian text. A lot of it hasn't been translated yet, but enough has to provide you with the Old Testament. The Old Testament is just regurgitating earlier Sumerian stories, and it's all there. So you've got these two options that either we naturally evolved, which is bullshit. It's not, it just doesn't make any sense at all.
No.
Because that wouldn't explain for us all evolving at exactly the same time across every single continent in the world, yet developing completely different languages, in some cases slightly different bone density and skin coloring, despite living in relatively similar climates.
Right.
So none of that makes any sense whatsoever. I think what did happen is probably more like the story in the Bible, in Genesis, and that of the Sumerian text, that we were created in the image of the gods. So I think they took what they found and tweaked it.
Right.
Just tweaked it. And that was perhaps done by different beings at different periods of time. And that would explain why we all, so if you like, we are slightly different looking, that we have different creeds and colors and different races and different languages. I think that different beings have come here and intervened at different points throughout the history of the earth, throughout its very beginning. And that this has been going on for thousands and thousands of years, that there has been intervention. Because if you look at what happens with regard to the evolution, if you like, of mankind, we go from literally picking up what appears to be some kind of tool, a stone, and realizing that we can use it to do things with. It then takes us millions of years to turn that into a flint tool and attach it to a stick and have what is the basis of an axe. And then nothing happens for millions of years. And then all of a sudden, very quickly, we start developing communities and cave art, which is why we were called cavemen. We start painting. And then within just thousands of years following that, we're building cities. We're studying astronomy. We understand agriculture. We're putting in laws in place. We're starting to wear clothes. And that happened really quickly. It doesn't work like that. But also, it appeared quickly everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. Even civilizations so different continents, different parts of the world built the same things at the same time, evolved at the same speed, apart from those that are completely cut off. Amazonians, for example, and so on. And you could also say, well, Sentinel Islands. There are little clusters where that hasn't happened, but where there are large populations of people, we evolved at the same time, built the same things, yet had never communicated with each other. We shared nothing. Yet, at exactly the same time, these incredible civilizations appear. So I think that we've been visited countless times by different beings, and they've worked with what they found when they arrived.
So that again leads credence to space. I would have to really wrap my head around the idea of actual space. At the same time,
no, not necessarily space. Sorry, Adam. Let's say that they just came through the wall. Let's say that it is flat and there's an ice wall. All they've got to do is travel through here and then work with whatever they found when they arrived. So I'm not saying they came from space at all. I don't know where they came from.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And I wasn't discrediting what you were saying, because I mean, somebody with your ilk and the amount of work and research that you've done, I would take your information and certainly work my way to amalgamating it into mine. Space is feasible. Obviously it has to be feasible, but it doesn't make sense because they pushed it so hard And I know we're running low on time here. We're down to 8 minutes. But the when you see these rockets go up, or when you see those really amazing light shows, for lack of a better term, in the sky where it looks like something hits and it just splooshes out, like that's phenomenal. So I would assume that there's a possibility that somebody somewhere is working on a way to get out of here. You know, again, the Simpsons. Homer Simpson has cracked this dream wide open when he hits the baseball into the ceiling. You know, and the whales come crashing down. And you're also not the first person to say that octopi are delicious and probably one of the most smartest entities out here. There's so many things. There's an entire show called Resident Alien, and it's a comedy, and it's one of the funniest shows on television. And it's all about how the octopus are, they're in from a different realm, a different reality, and they're the ones controlling everything down here. And it's kind of a neat take on it. And again, we get wrapped up in quote unquote transvestigation. Like, is it a man or a woman? Like I'm not going to single anybody out when I talk directly about Jennifer Aniston, but she is a really interesting point of contention for me because my brain, once it sees something, it can't unsee it. And all I see in her is all of her manly features. And I'm not knocking her. Like, if she came on the show right now, I'd be like, hey, look, you're impressive. I'm fascinated with what you are, and I'm curious. So there's no, I'm not saying she's a tranny and she's disgusting. I'm saying it's fascinating. Jennifer Aniston, Cameron Diaz, all of these celebrities that can no longer hide, as they age, their manly features sort of poking out. They retire young. They do this. They sort of step out of the limelight. All of these celebrities who die young, they can no longer, keep up with the image of that character. So they sort of move on from it. There's a fellow called the Fittest Flat Earther running around talking about how, oh, you've heard of him. Yeah. So they're talking about how he's this and he's that. And I see some of his stuff and I'm like, you're so far into left field, but like you're on to something. And so like when I see in Jennifer Aniston, I don't see a woman. I see a man in drag. A very skinny man in drag with a giant head. And again, I'm not knocking her. This is just what I'm seeing. And everyone can look at me and go, oh, well, you're this, you're that. I'm like, okay, look, listen, ad hominem. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that we're not allowed to talk about these things without it being, name calling and ridicule going on around that. But I also know that my friends don't see it at all. They think I'm crazy when I point out that Jennifer Aniston more than likely is a man. Now, again, I don't think she's a man, because I don't believe in men and women. I believe that was a duality-based limitation. And so I believe that there's it's not hard to believe that there's a group of people sharing a message that's creating an image, which is by then Hollywood, right? And we all know what Hollywood is. It is the wood used in the wands that cast the spells, right? So it's like, we can go down these rabbit holes and a lot of it just simply makes sense. So I'd love to sit down. Have you seen the movie Nefarious? Have you seen that yet? No. So throw that on your to watch list, because to me it's a very close Nefarious. It is an interview with an elite. They're sharing a lot of really massive amount of truth in plain sight, and it's basically just two actors sitting there doing the spiel. It's a low budget, but it is phenomenal. Nefarious, about a prisoner on death row. And to anyone listening right now, to everyone listening, if you haven't seen it, certainly worth a watch. But when you start seeing things that you can't unsee, this is just the craziest thing for me, because it's just, these are the pieces that lead to more pieces. And again, you and I we've gotten absolutely nowhere in this conversation because there's so much amazing stuff to talk about. And we've got 4 minutes left. So I want you to have your piece for as much time as you've got, and share what you've got. And again, everything that you talk about will be in the show liner notes. And I want my audience to know more about you and what you're doing as well.
More about me and what I'm doing. Well, my main area is Tartaria. I've been researching different conspiracy theories for such a long time, over 30 years.
Right.
And that was my dad that introduced me to this. But Tartaria is my main area. That's my focal point. But I dip into other things, because once you go down one rabbit hole, you end up finding a warrant. Oh, yeah. And before you know it, you're looking at, for example, Jennifer Aniston. And it's interesting that you raised that, because, I'm not going to deny it. He's a good looking lad.
Yeah.
He is. But for me, I've got to say, I was disappointed when I found out that Jennifer's a man. So when you've got people like Sandra Bullock, for example, that are more obvious
Yeah.
initially at first sight. But obviously, Jennifer Aniston's mother was a makeup artist working in Hollywood. The dad was connected with Hollywood. They were given an opportunity when she was a kid, but they wanted a girl.
Mm.
So the parents clearly intervened and did something that perhaps uh, Jennifer might not have wanted, given the ability to actually make that decision for himself, herself at the time. But yeah, I do find it strange, the inversion, and I think that perhaps has some sort of connection to Baphomet.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so really Tartaria is where I'm at. That tends to be what I'm spending most of my time researching. And at the moment, the one thing that I am looking at, because I can't get the Piri Reis map out of my head. You were talking about maps earlier on.
Right.
The Piri Reis map, how this Ottoman admiral could produce such an accurate image of Antarctica as it would appear without the ice in the 1500s. Now, I know that he got information, shared information from earlier maps that have been drawn, but they didn't predate what we are told was the Ice Age, the time that Antarctica became completely covered. So, how was he able to draw something that now with radar they can actually line up almost identically to the shoreline of Antarctica before it was covered? How was he able to do that? He showed animals, he showed vegetation, and so on. Lots of things that shouldn't really have been visible if it was covered in ice when it was drawn. So I think, I just think something has happened in the 15, 16, 1700s. Something happened that caused Antarctica to be completely covered in ice.
What
A cataclysmic event, a pole shift. Something has happened, and that's currently what I'm researching.
what if Antarctica isn't covered in ice?
And that what we've been told is all bullshit.
It's completely a lie anyway. Yeah. And so that's run through my head too, because we're
Could be. I
familiar
know someone who's been there, but it certainly. But
Well-
they've only been to one area. It's restricted so heavily, so
we're
it's
familiar
difficult
with
to know.
so think about the globe, right? This is what we think Antarctica looks like on the bottom of the globe. But the flat earth, this is what Antarctica looks like, right? And then the place that you're allowed to travel to, this is what Antarctica looks like. So when you talk about that, I mean, when you interject the fact that absolutely everything we've been told was a lie about everything, then it seems easy to believe that, okay, well, Antarctica is not totally covered in ice, and that's just a thing. But with it being covered in ice, you get more fear porn out of that, because once the ice starts to melt and it comes off the ground, then the water levels are going to go up. Now, since the dawn of time, the water levels haven't gone up. Speaking of the dawn of time, there's a massive truth. You and I could talk for hours. I know that you've got to get going, but there's a massive truth behind the fact that our timeline, like right now, we believe it's the year 2026, and 2026 years ago, Jesus was walking around. But there's a high likelihood that he was probably here 800 years ago, and that they just completely fudged the entirety of the calendar for whatever reason, or to create depth, or to create a manipulation as to where we stand right now. I know I was born in 1980, and that implies that 1980 years before that, Jesus was here. But what if he was here? What if the Dark Ages weren't a thing? What if all of that history was just erased? Does that change how we perceive what we perceive? The answer is yes. And like Alan Watts said, once you start eliminating all of the bullshit, all that could possibly be left is the truth. And
Well,
that to me, what's that?
That is a chapter in my first book, Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. The timeline manipulation, that is an entire chapter.
Yeah.
Anatoly Fomenko's book, New Chronology, is fantastic for anybody that's interested in that. But I did take the nuts and bolts of it and put it into my book because it's quite heavy going. So the year now is, in theory, 1226, and 800 years were added to the timeline. That then aligns with the period we call Tartaria, being the millennial reign of Christ. Because for Jesus to have been born when we're told he was, and for the story of Herod to align with that, for it to even be possible, he would have had to have been born around, so I can't remember off the top of my head the exact year, but I think it's 23 BC. 23 BC or BCE, before Common Era, would have to have been when he was around for Herod to have done what he did.
Right.
You fast forward 1,000 years, that takes you to 976 CE. 976 is the end of the millennial reign and the start of Satan's little season. Well, Satan's little season is 1776, the beginning of New World Order, and Lucifer on the statue, depicted by the Statue of Liberty, breaking free from the chains and, causing havoc everywhere. So Anatoly Fomenko believes that 800 years were fictitiously added to our timeline, and that the Dark Ages, just for example, never actually existed.
Right.
So therefore, a lot of events, like the collapse of the Roman Empire, happened a lot more recently than we've been told, and that Jesus was, in theory, walking amongst us until 250 years ago.
With Rosa Parks on the bus, yeah.
So yes, I do align with that. That mirrors my research, but it originally, all of that information was put out there by Anatoly Fomenko. Like I said in my first book, I've broken it down to make it a little bit easier for people to take on board.
Well, credit where credit is due, for sure. But I mean, if you talk about the Roman Empire, let's just talk quickly about the all of the world's fairs.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to go in a second.
Hey,
I'm
burn
so
them all.
sorry.
Yeah, you do got to go. My bad. I could talk again. I'd talk to you for hours. Guy, love having you on the show. You were here 8 months ago. I want to get you on here, again, but like hopefully once every 2 or 3 months, something like that.
Yeah, I'd love to.
You just have so much to say, and the audience loves you. And the more exposure we can get for you, the better. I mean, you're already well exposed, but I love that we can cross pool and just have these amazing conversations. You're easily one of my all-time favorite guests.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. That's really kind of you.
Your energy and your disposition is absolutely perfect. So we absolutely love it over here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And if you guys want to reach out to him, by all means, you can find him on Facebook. All of his info will be in the show liner notes. And please do reach out to him. I will talk to you in a little bit because I want to get some of your books over here and some HP sauce. But we'll get that all sorted out. And again, I can't thank you enough for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on. And I'm more than happy to come back whenever you need me.
I love it, brother. We'll talk soon.
Take care.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast. Stay connected with us directly through the mentalmasteryalliance.com. You can also join the discussion on Instagram at instagram.com/the Mental Mastery Alliance. Let the team know you're listening by using the hashtag TMMA or tagging us at the Mental Mastery Alliance. To have your voice heard on the show, leave a voicemail or send a text to 647-338-1265. Long distance charges may apply. If you love us, leave us a review. If you hate us, you spend your time in weird ways, but also leave a review. Every review on iTunes tickles the algorithm, helping us grow. Until next time, unity over division. This concludes the most surreal portion of your day.
You got it, Pontiac.